Welcome back to Views with Tease, your agenda-free news. This is Jerome Hughes. Now let's go ahead and get right into it. So, guess what? Entertainment Weekly has come out with a story today where Rings of Power introduced the story Hobbits. Okay, so coming in from Entertainment Weekly today, Rings of Power for season 2 of Rings of Power season 2, we get the stores and everything. But guess what? The stores, no surprise, mostly race swapped. All right, and then we got a few original characters included. This one in the photo right here. Her name is Gundabel. I don't know. Is this some name that something that Tolkien didn't, J.R.R. Tolkien himself didn't even make up? But the fact of the matter is that they got this wrong once again. Now, granted, yes, this is supposed to take place in the Second Age. The stores were around in the Second Age. They weren't prominent, but they were around though. Okay, well, actually, I don't even think they were around in the Second Age. You know, I think they came like the rest of the Hobbits. It came about in the Third Age, at the beginning of the Third Age. But the fact of the matter is that, you know, this Rings of Power season 2 and Rings of Power in general was supposed to take place in the Second Age. Okay. But the fact of the matter is, like, they still got that wrong and they got this wrong. I'm going to explain it to you in today's video. All right. And this video, we got a lot cut out for us. All right, so basically today we're diving into the topic that's become all too common for us in the entertainment industry. Yet another example of a beloved franchise being twisted and all to beyond recognition. Okay, I'm talking about Amazon Prime Video and their ongoing desecration of J.R.R. Tolkien's world of Lord of the Rings with the Rings of Power season 2. This time they've completely messed up with the portrayal of store hobbits. Okay, now for those who might not be as familiar with J.R.R. Tolkien's work, you might wonder what's the big deal. Okay, well, when it comes to honoring the legacy of such a detailed and carefully constructed world by J.R.R. Tolkien, getting these details right isn't just important, it's essential. So let's break down exactly where Rings of Power season 2 went wrong and why it should matter to anyone who respects J.R.R. Tolkien's legacy. Okay, now before we jump into specifics about the store hobbits, it's also important to understand why J.R.R. Tolkien's work is revered. Okay, so Rings of Power season 2 is supposed to be an adaptation of this revered work, but instead is devastating in ways that undermine the very essence of what makes, you know, the Middle Earth so special. And the fact of the matter is, like I said in previous videos, and for the past few years, Rings of Power isn't an end all be all. It's just a few pages from the epilogue or the appendices of the first Lord of the Rings novel, Fellowship of the Ring. Okay, so basically they shouldn't have made this show in the first place because they don't have that many rights to it. They just add a bunch of stuff willy-nilly to Rings of Power, and Rings of Power season 2 is no different, especially what they did with Tom Bombadil. So J.R.R. Tolkien didn't just write stories. Okay, J.R.R. Tolkien created an entire world complete with its own languages, histories, and even mythology. Middle Earth is one of the most meticulously crafted fantasy worlds ever imagined. Now, J.R.R. Tolkien himself spent decades refining his work and making sure that every detail was consistent with the cultures, histories, and the characters he created. Okay, now, and I can't get enough of this, but when someone actually decides to go ahead and adapt J.R.R. Tolkien's work, whether it's for film, television, or any other thing, they're not just telling a story, they're taking on the responsibility of trying to maintain the integrity of a world that millions of people hold dear. Rings of Power season 2 in this responsibility fail in this responsibility by making changes that's not just minor tweaks, but just big alterations to J.R.R. Tolkien's original vision. Now, this isn't just a creative choice, it's a serious breach of trust with the fans who have invested so much into these stories. Now, we're going to go ahead and get into the meat of the issue. Who are the store hobbits? Who are they really are, and how Rings of Power season 2 has misrepresented them. According to J.R.R. Tolkien's writings, particularly in Silmarillion and the Lord of the Rings appendices, the stores were one of the 3 original breeds of the hobbits. Now, the other 2 were the Hardfoots and the Falahides. Each group had its own distinct characteristics, and together they formed the early Hobbit societies that we all know and love. Now, I don't know much about the stories. I had to do research, but the stories are known for being sturdier and broader than the other Hobbit types. They were a little larger with a particular love for rivers and water. In fact, they were the only hobbits who would ever be found swimming or using boats, which is rare in hobbit culture. See, the Stoors originally settled near the Gladden Fields, close to the River Anduin, a location that's of significant historical importance in Middle-earth. Yet, in Rings of Power Season 2, Amazon, as mentioned in the article, has chosen to disregard this important detail, placing the Stoors in a completely different and historically inaccurate location. Now, where is this location, you ask? Here's where the Amazon Rings of Power Season 2 starts to go off in the rails. See, in J.R.R. Tolkien's descriptions, the Stoors were never depicted as being black, okay? This is just some minor detail as part of their identity as J.R.R. Tolkien actually envisioned it, but the Stoors, like other hobbits, were portrayed with lighter skin, okay, which was consistent with their Northern European-inspired origins. So when Prime Video decided to go ahead and portray these hobbits differently in the Rings of Power Season 2, it's not just a creative choice of their own, it's a blatant disregard for the source material, as well as trying to go ahead and get woke. But it doesn't stop there. Let's talk about the geographic placement of the Stoors and Amazon's adaptation of Rings of Power Season 2. Now, according to J.R.R. Tolkien, the Stoors originally lived in the Anduin Valley, specifically near the Gladden Fields, as I said. This location is significant in J.R.R. Tolkien's world as it's close to where the One Ring was lost and later found by Gollum, who was incidentally a Stoor himself. Yet in Rings of Power Season 2, Amazon decided to go ahead and move these hobbits to the region of Rhûn, a place that has no historical connection to the Stoors in J.R.R. Tolkien's work, okay? Now, the Gladden Fields are west of the Misty Mountains and far removed from the region of Rhûn, which is located in the far east of the Middle-earth. Rhûn is a land known for its own distinct cultures and peoples, and it's also a desert, and it's also many of whom were aligned with Sauron during the War of the Ring, and there's no mention of J.R.R. Tolkien's work of the Hobbits, Stoor or otherwise, ever living in Rhûn. So when Amazon decides to place these hobbits in Rhûn in the Rings of Power Season 2, they're not just moving a few pieces around for the sake of the story. They're completely rewriting the history and the geography that J.R.R. Tolkien so carefully laid out. Okay, and it's not just a minor issue if you ask me. No, it's not just a minor issue. The placement of different peoples and cultures in Middle Earth is basically integral to the story of J.R.R. Tolkien was telling. It's part of what makes his world feel so real and so lived in. And moving the Stoors to Rhûn in Rings of Power Season 2 is just as crazy as placing the Hobbits in Mordor. It just doesn't fit with the established world and its lore. Now, let's address the elephant in the room. Some people will argue that Amazon is just taking creative liberties, as I said before, to make the story more appealing to a modern audience. But here's the thing. When you take so many liberties as seen in Rings of Power Season 1 and Rings of Power Season 2, you're no longer adapting the source material. You're just disrespecting it, okay? And this is not the first time Amazon has shown a lack of respect for J.R.R. Tolkien's work from the very beginning. See, Rings of Power Season 2 has been riddled with changes that just don't tweak the story. They fundamentally alter it, okay? Whether it's inventing new characters and storylines that have no basis in J.R.R. Tolkien's writings or changing the nature of existing characters, Amazon repeatedly shown in Rings of Power Season 2 that they're more interested in pushing their own woke agenda than honoring the legacy of J.R.R. Tolkien's work. All right, so what's worse is that these changes in Rings of Power Season 2 are often justified under the guise of making the story more inclusive or diverse, but what they fail to understand is that Middle-earth was already diverse, just not in the way modern woke Hollywood defines it, okay? And J.R.R. Tolkien's world was rich with different cultures, races, and peoples, each with their own unique histories and identities. By imposing modern sensibilities on this world, Rings of Power Season 2 is not adding diversity. They're simply erasing the rich tapestry that J.R.R. Tolkien created, okay? So why does all of this matter? You know, why should we care if Amazon gets the Stoors wrong or places them in the wrong part of Middle Earth in Rings of Power Season 2? The answer lies in the long-term consequences of these different changes. And remind you, Season 1 only had 30% of people watching it throughout the end. First and foremost, it's about respect. You know, when you adapt some J.R.R. Tolkien's work, especially work as revered as J.R.R. Tolkien, you have the responsibility to respect the source material. It's not just about staying true to the plot. It's about honoring the world and the characters that the author created. Okay, when you start changing fundamental aspects of that world by J.R.R. Tolkien, as Rings of Power Season 2 does, you're not just making a different version of the story. You're fundamentally altering the essence of what made that world special in the first place. But beyond respect, there's another issue at play here: the impact of future adaptations. You see, when studios like Amazon take these kind of liberties with the source materials in Rings of Power Season 2, it sets a dangerous precedent. Okay, it tells the other creators that it's okay to change whatever they want as long as it serves their narrative or woke agenda. And that's a slippery slope right there. Once we start allowing these kinds of changes as seen in Rings of Power Season 2, we risk losing the magic and the integrity of the stories that we all love. Okay, now let's go ahead and be honest right now, okay? J.R.R. Tolkien had a clear vision for Middle-earth, a vision that was rooted in his love for mythology, language, and history. J.R.R. Tolkien's world was inspired by ancient European cultures, and that's part of what gives it a unique flavor. But what we're seeing with Amazon's Rings of Power Season 2 is an attempt to try to impose modern woke Hollywood sensibilities on a world that was never meant to accommodate them, okay? And yeah, it's not just about the store Hobbits, it's about a broader trend in the entertainment industry where the original vision of the creators like J.R.R. Tolkien is being overshadowed by the demands of woke modern audiences, which isn't much of them. And Rings of Power Season 2 is a prime example of how studios are more concerned with being relevant than with being true to the source material. And in the process, they're alienating the very fans who care the most about these stories. And that's what leads them to go ahead and abandon them. Okay, and let's not forget that this is not the first time Amazon stumbled with the Rings of Power Season 2. First season was already riddled with issues from the introduction of new characters who had no basis in J.R.R. Tolkien's writings to the complete overhaul of the established lore. Fans were understandably upset, and many of us hoped that Rings of Power Season 2 might course correct and show more respect for the source material, where actually I didn't. But unfortunately, it seems that Amazon hasn't learned its lesson at all. So exactly where do we go from here? Well, I'm gonna be honest with y'all. The sad truth is that the Rings of Power Season 2 is going to be out soon, and there's little we can do to change it. But what we can do is make our voices heard. We can hold studios accountable for the way they treat the stories that we love. We can also demand that they respect the source material even further, rather than just twisting it into fit out their own woke agendas, as we about to see in Rings of Power Season 2. But at the end of the day, you know, it's up to us, the fans, who protect the legacy of the J.R.R. Tolkien's work. Now, we can't let studios like Amazon continue to chip away at the foundation of these beloved stories and stuff. So let's keep on speaking out, keep sharing our love for J.R.R. Tolkien and his world, and keep holding those creators accountable, because if we don't, who will? Okay, so let me know your thoughts about this in comments below. Also, be sure to include any additional thoughts you may have this particular topic. If you enjoy what I shared in this video, go ahead, smash the like button, share far wide across social media. And if you have done so already and you enjoyed all the content that I put out there, go ahead, subscribe to the channel. Click the bell notification so that way you're notified of future uploads and updates. Till then, peace.